My name is Emma. For 6 months, my life has been measured in the sterile scent of antiseptic, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, and the slow, painful cadence of hope. The space between our apartment and the neurology ward of St. Vincent's Hospital has become my only geography. My husband, Daniel, lay in room 314, a silent monument to the truck that ran a red light and shattered our world on a rainy Tuesday in October. The Daniel I knew, the architect with a perpetually ink-stained finger and a laugh that could disarm a tense room, was gone. In his place was a man with the same face, but with eyes like still, deep ponds, reflecting nothing familiar. Traumatic brain injury, the doctors said, severe amnesia. The past 15 years, our entire life together, had been wiped clean, like a chalkboard after a lecture. He didn't remember our meeting at that cramped university library, our wedding in the botanical gardens under a canopy of cherry blossoms, the years of building his firm, my freelance editing business, our quiet evenings and loud arguments, and the comfortable silence of two people who know each other's souls. But I remembered, and so I became the keeper of our memories. I brought in photo albums, pointing at pictures of us in Rome, on hiking trails, at housewarming parties. "That's us, Daniel. We bought that awful giant fern and you named it Frank." I played his favorite music, the melancholic indie folk he loved but was embarrassed to admit. I read to him from the dog-eared copy of East of Eden we'd been passing back and forth. I talked about the blue-gray paint we'd argued over for the living room, the leaky faucet he'd fixed with a triumphant shout, the way he took his coffee, black, 2 sugars, a habit he'd picked up from his father. My love became a daily offering laid at the altar of his broken mind. I fed him, helped the nurses with his physiotherapy, massaged his stiffening hands. I spoke to the empty eyes, willing the man behind them to hear me, to come back. My friends told me I was a saint, a martyr. My sister, voice thick with worry, suggested I start thinking about myself. But how could I? Daniel was myself. Our shared history was the bedrock of my identity. Without it, I was adrift. Caring for him was the only rope tethering me to shore. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The brain is healing. New pathways are forming. Be patient, Emma. And I was. Patience was my new profession. I lived for the tiny flickers, the day his fingers seemed to curl around mine for a second, the time he muttered, "cold," when the window was open, the way he began to track me with his eyes as I moved around the room. Each one was a star in my dark sky. Then, about 5 months in, the fog began to lift. Not in a dramatic movie-style moment, but in fragments. He started forming full sentences. He remembered his mother's name. He asked for a specific brand of ginger ale he liked as a kid. The nurses called it remarkable progress. My heart soared. My Daniel was coming home. Not just to our apartment, but to me. The day he truly woke up was a Thursday. The sun was streaming through the blinds, painting stripes on the hospital floor. He had been more alert all morning, watching me intently as I arranged some new flowers. Sunflowers, his favorite. "Emma," he said, his voice still rough from disuse, but clearer than it had been in months. I froze, the stem of a sunflower in my hand. He hadn't used my name in so long. "Yes, Daniel, I'm here." He frowned, a deep, pained line forming between his brows. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, there was a conscious presence behind his gaze. Not just recognition of a caretaker, but a searching, frantic cognition. "Emma, where are the kids? Is Katie here? Are they okay?" The room tilted. The cheerful yellow of the sunflowers suddenly seemed garish, offensive. The beeping of the monitor matched the frantic rhythm now pounding in my ears. "Kids?" I managed, my voice a whisper. "Daniel, we don't have children." He shook his head, agitated. No, Michael and Sophie. They must be so scared. Where's Katie? I need to see Katie. Is she hurt?" Katie, Michael, Sophie. Names I had never heard. A life I knew nothing about. A cold, sharp dread sharper than any grief I'd felt in the last 6 months, began to crystallize in my gut. "Daniel," I said, forcing calm into my tone, the tone I used when he was confused about the day. "Who is Katie?" His eyes, now fully clear and filled with a terror that had nothing to do with the accident, locked onto mine. "My wife." The word was a physical blow. I stumbled back, hitting the chair by his bed. The world didn't shatter. It reconfigured itself into a horrifying alien shape. The last 6 months of devotion, the 15 years of marriage, our entire shared history, it all crumbled to dust, revealing a foundation of lies I had never suspected. "I'm your wife, Daniel," I said, but the words sounded hollow, ridiculous. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and utter confusion. "No, that's not right. I'm sorry. You've been so kind. But Katie, we have a house in Oak Park. The kids, Michael just turned 7. Sophie is 4. His descriptions were vivid, detailed. A red brick house with a tire swing, a calico cat named Mochi, Katie's garden full of lavender. The clinical part of my mind, the part that had learned to talk to doctors and insurance companies, took over. This was a confabulation, a common symptom. The brain, trying to fill gaps, creates false memories. It had to be. The alternative was unthinkable. But the details, the tire swing, the lavender. I left the room on legs made of water. In the harsh fluorescent light of the hallway, I leaned against the cool wall, gasping for air. With trembling hands, I took out my phone. I had never had reason to doubt Daniel. I'd never snooped. We had separate phones, separate laptops, a marriage built on what I believed was unshakable trust. Now I typed Katie Oak Park into a search engine, combined with his name, his firm's name. Nothing. Then I did the unthinkable. I logged into his email on my phone. The password was our wedding date, a naive, heartbreaking detail. My vision blurred as I scanned. Work emails, newsletters, receipts, and then, in the promotions folder, an innocuous email from a family dentistry practice in Oak Park. Appointment reminder for Sophie Lawson. Lawson, his mother's maiden name, one he never used. A few clicks later, buried in archived messages, I found it. A thread, sent from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line, "Weekend plans." The preview, "Can't wait for you to get here. The kids are bouncing off the walls. Love you, Katie." The proof was a cold, digital stone in my hand. I felt nothing at first. Then, a wave of nausea so intense, I had to rush to the restroom. I spent 10 minutes dry heaving over a toilet, my body trying to expel the poison of the truth. He hadn't just forgotten me. He had been living a parallel life, a complete, full-bodied lie. Our marriage, our quiet, child-free life of books and travel and shared ambitions, was only one act in his play, and I had never read the full script. The next few days were a hellish blur. I confronted him, showing him our marriage certificate, photos from our wedding. He was horrified, disoriented, but the memory of Katie and the kids was more real, more visceral to his healing brain than the evidence I presented. His distress was genuine. He was a man caught between two realities, both of which he believed in. The doctors were baffled. This wasn't textbook confabulation. The memories were too consistent, too emotionally charged. I knew what I had to do. I had to find her, the other wife. Using the details from his emails and the dentistry reminder, it wasn't hard. Catherine Katie Lawson. She lived at 42 Maple Drive, Oak Park. A picture-perfect house, just as he'd described. I drove there on a Sunday afternoon, my heart a block of ice in my chest. I saw a woman with light brown hair and a ponytail, kneeling in a garden, pulling weeds. Lavender bushes lined the walkway. A red tricycle lay on its side on the path. I parked down the street and watched. A little girl with pigtails ran out, followed by a boy with a soccer ball. The woman laughed, wiped her forehead with her arm, and hugged them. She looked happy, normal, unsuspecting. I didn't have the courage to approach. Not yet. Instead, I went back to the hospital. Daniel was asleep. I sat in the now-hated chair and, with fingers that felt like someone else's, composed an email to the address I'd found. "Dear Catherine," I wrote, "my name is Emma Reed. I believe we are married to the same man, Daniel Reed/Lawson. He is currently in St. Vincent's Hospital, room 314, recovering from a serious accident. I think we need to talk. Please." The reply came within an hour. It was short, just one line, but I could feel the seismic shock radiating from it. What is this? Some kind of sick joke? We agreed to meet at a neutral, anonymous coffee shop downtown, far from both our worlds. I saw her the moment she walked in. She was prettier than I'd imagined, with a warm, open face now etched with suspicion and fear. She held her purse like a shield. We sized each other up, two shipwreck survivors washed up on the same barren island. There was no polite small talk. I laid out the facts, my voice eerily calm. My 15-year marriage, the accident, his amnesia, his calls for Katie, Michael, and Sophie. I showed her pictures of Daniel and me on my phone. I showed her a photo of his driver's license with our address. Her face went from disbelief to dawning horror to a pale, sickly understanding. She didn't cry. She just stared, her hands shaking as she pulled out her own phone. She showed me her photos. Daniel, with a beard he'd never worn with me, pushing a little girl on a swing. Daniel, wearing an ugly Christmas sweater, holding a baby boy. Daniel, kissing her on the cheek in a kitchen I didn't recognize. Their wedding photo, a small, intimate ceremony. It was dated 8 years ago. "He travels for work," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Architectural projects, weeks at a time. He said the long hours were for us, for the kids' future." She had a whole narrative. The stressful but successful freelance architect, the devoted but often absent father. We pieced it together, two detectives solving the crime of our own lives. The double phones, the separate bank accounts he'd explained to me as tax efficient, and to her as business necessities. The work trips that were his time with the other family. The careful scheduling, the lies layered upon lies. He had been a master architect of deception, building two separate, perfect lives, and we had been the willing, trusting inhabitants. The strangest thing happened then. The initial shock, the rage, the betrayal, it began to morph into something else. We were not enemies. We were fellow victims of the same catastrophe. We were both looking at the ruins of our lives, and the man who had built them was lying in a hospital bed, his mind a scrambled map of his own making. "What do we do?" Katie asked, finally letting the tears fall. "The kids, they ask for him every day. I told them Daddy was on a very long work trip." "I don't know," I said honestly, "but we have to deal with him, together." And so we formed an uneasy, tragic alliance. We went to the hospital together the next day. Walking into room 314 with Katie was the most surreal moment of my life. Daniel's eyes, when they landed on her, filled with immediate, profound relief and love. "Katie, you're here!" Then they flicked to me, and confusion clouded his face again. "Daniel," Katie said, her voice firm but gentle. She took his hand. "This is Emma. You are married to her, too." We presented our evidence, our shared truth, like prosecutors delivering a closing argument. We showed him the dual timelines, the overlapping dates, the impossible geography. We watched as the man we both loved,